This is the Rockhouse Center podcast, and I'm John Murphy.
I'm Beth Murphy, and we're here today to address a question that's a critically important one that parents are asking us essentially every time they call about a family situation where they are mystified by the circumstances with a child where they've done everything they know to do. They've done consequences, they've done punishment, they've taught wisdom, they've made it clear that if you go down this track, that will go well for you. If you go down that track, it won't go well for you. They're dealing with a behavior or they're dealing with emotions where their children are just really struggling, and the parents are absolutely bewildered as to why they've done everything they know to do and nothing is working. And so essentially, they want to know how to break the code to get into their child's heart, to address the deep issues in their child's heart. And that's what we want to talk about today.
This all started when that very question came up with a client that was in my office, and we'd worked through one of our sessions and it had gone well. And then there was this sort of doorknob conversation where he turns to me and says, "So how do you parent your children?" That was a really big question that was going to take a lot of conversation to get through, but it did cause me to just ask God, just to start a conversation with God is, well, how do you parent your children? What should I tell this person? And the response was, parent your child the way I parent you, the way God parents. So the model is the way God parents. So then that really opened up a pathway of understanding, which we've gone way down that pathway and tried to continue to use that basic standard of understanding how to parent, and it's had some pretty phenomenal results.
Yeah, I think that question was posed to you in 2011, so been building the answer ever since. And as I recall the situation, what he was dealing with, it wasn't a random, lighthearted question. He was in a very difficult situation. That was a tangled web for which there appeared to be no answer. Because I remember you're describing how for the moment you just felt stuck, like, I have no idea how to parent. And that's where God, of course, does his best work, is when we know we have no idea what the answer is to that question that person just posed. And so God showed up and gave you the big picture answer, which is he wants to help us parent our children the way he parents us. So that begins with, how does he parent us? What's the most foundational characteristic of God's relationship with us? Well, it would be the fact that he loves us without condition. And that, we know from Scripture that he is love. He doesn't just have love some days and he's got more some days than others. He's the source of love. He's it. He is love. So 2 equals 2. God equals love. And so he's the source of worth, and then the foundational source of all of our well-being is knowing that we are loved by him with no condition whatsoever. We didn't do anything to earn it. We can't do anything to lose it. There's no risk he will ever reject us. There is no risk he'll ever be disappointed in us, or that he'll set us aside or create distance. He does not do that. He does not withhold his love from us, no matter what. He has gone before us. He knows all of our failings. He knows our failings that haven't happened yet. And he knows our every, our thoughts before they're fully formed and our words before they're on our lips. And he loves us without condition. Okay, so that's the starting place with, we're not going to be him, obviously. We're not God. But that's the foundation for how he loves us.
And to match how he loves us, there is a place in our heart which he has put there, which needs his love to be okay. There's a very basic aspect of who we are that is built into us. Ecclesiastes 3:11 speaks about the divine need. We have this need to be loved divinely. And that's something that we will talk about more in another section. But right now we want to talk about the parents' role, because the parents are on the sort of the first line of loving their children. And the parents are the first place as guides of the youth of their children. They are the first place that they go to fill this need. That's the first relationship they have. And so parents are in this place of needing to be able to begin to start satisfying this unconditional, not tied to behavior kind of love that begins to fill something that's empty inside of a child. We'll talk later about the handoff and engaging God. But for now, the really critical thing and the movement that we've seen has been so powerful is just around beginning to help the parents break the code of what the child needs, break the code of the behavior through expressions of unconditional love in a way in which the child can understand it and accept it. And then it begins to fill this place, and then it begins to move what motivates them, what changes, what they value, what's important to them, what kinds of things they engage in, how they are around the household, whether they engage or don't engage in activities and chores and so forth. A lot of that, seems mysterious when you just can't get the child to do those things no matter what you tell them to do. As mysterious as it may seem, there is an answer to that. And it's about understanding this need and how to speak into it.
So going back to the huge concept here on what gets established by being loved with, not tied to whether or not I'm behaving well or what my performance is that it creates worth. So God's the ultimate source of creating worth in us by the way in which he loved us and chose us and set us apart. He's the source of our worth. And so parents who come to Rock House commonly express their concern about their child's low self-worth. And that's a giant issue in today's culture that can be underneath their child's anxiety and depression or their really risky behavior or all kinds of things that their children may suffer from. The question becomes, how do I deal with their low self-worth? And so that's also directly tied to what we're talking about today, is looking at God as the source of worth and parents as the source of worth in representing God, kind of like, as we've talked about, the value bank. They're the ones that can make deposits of love and worth in their child's bank, kind of like you make a deposit in a bank. Every child has got their value bank that needs deposits instead of withdrawals. They bump into plenty of things in their world, in their culture, with their peers and all kinds of aspects in life that are constantly making withdrawals on their worth bank. And so we want to help parents understand how to represent God in a way that makes those deposits in their child's worth bank.
Yeah, we're not substituting parents for God or vice versa. It's simply the fact that the parents are the first opportunity that children have to start to receive unconditional love. And they have this need for it. The parents are the first ones that can speak into it. But there is the rub, is that so many parents feel like, I love my child. There's no question of no matter what my child ever does, I'm going to love them. But here's the code problem. Almost in the same way in which people have a really hard time understanding that God could completely know them and completely love and accept them no matter what. In the same way, children struggle with that as well. So there's two codes being broken here. There's one, understanding the child's heart and what drives the child. And there's the other thing, which is that the child can't break the code on the actual, real, deep presence of unconditional love that's in virtually every parent. And so that's one of the things that we have to address, is how is it that we feel like that we're putting forth all these answers and we're loving in this way and we're valuing them so that they would have value, but somehow they're not getting it. Why are they not getting it?
So every parent is loving their child to the best of their ability. We all have varying levels of ability to express that or to have love or have God's love come through us, but parents are up at bat. They're doing the best they know how to do, and that is right at the core of what is so mystifying to parents. Like, why can they not get this? Why do they have any clue how much I've sacrificed? Like what my life was like before I had a child, and how it's changed, and how everything is just turned upside down in terms of my life focus, and how I'm doing everything I know to do to pour into this child's life. How could they possibly misinterpret that or not receive it, not accept it, not understand it? And so, just what you said a minute ago, I just want to capture that because the enormous significance of it, that God, of course, has done that infinitely better than any of us ever possibly could. But I can assure you that every parent that comes here has some amount of wondering about God. Like, I prayed and prayed and prayed about this situation with my child or my job or my whatever, and God hasn't answered my prayers, and there are just days I really do wonder about God. Is he really listening? Does he really care? Does he really hear my prayers? All right, so if we in our flesh can question the goodness of God, and he's God, and we're questioning his goodness, well, of course our kids might question our love for them because we're human and they're human. And so it's back to that, despite the fact that we are doing the very best that we know to do as parents, there's a there's a lack of code breaking going on their side. And so that's what we want to help parents get, is how to break that code in their child's heart and express their love in a way that their child can correctly interpret it and receive it.
Yeah, I think the current expressions of love that are traditional, which is all the activities that they participate in, they provide for them, they give them a house and a warm meal and a warm bed and all those kinds of basic things, and then they've got the privileges that may come with some sort of vacations or especially
electronics
good or some kind
going
of
to all
gift.
their games
and so we can be taking them to every practice, showing up at every practice, every game, all of those kinds of things, helping them with their homework, all that stuff. It's really, this adds to the bewilderment, which is, why is that not enough? Why is that not communicating? So I want to back up into the basic way in which we work with our children to help understand that. The foundational connection that we have with children in most cases is that it's either going to be praise for doing well and discipline for doing poorly. Also, a lot of parents would say, I think that's an expression of love, that I'm going in and I'm praising, and I think it's an expression of love that I spend the time to discipline and direct my child. Again, why don't they get that? So what you have is this sort of singular channel that we're on here, where the interaction between the parent and the child is praise and discipline. A child is looking for love. They're looking for unconditional love, and what they receive, unless there is specific unconditional love expressed in some other channel and some other time, then this back and forth of either I'm being praised for doing well or disciplined for doing poorly, that's performance-based love. They're seeing that when they're doing well, they're praised, and we think that in our praise and our connection with them when they're doing well that we're expressing love, and we are. But it's still a conditional thing. Even in the best side, even on the praise side, when it's a very positive experience, and you're giving them all kinds of accolades, and you're being close and warm and relating well around something that is a praiseworthy event, the interesting thing is that that's still conditional love. And then, of course, on the discipline side, it's very clear to the child that they do something wrong and they get punished, or the parent might withdraw their relationship, or somehow they're distanced, or they're sent away to their room, or whatever it is. There's a distance that's created through that process. Well, then again, that means that, when I do badly, they withdraw. When I do well, they do praise. So I'm on this seesaw back and forth with my parents, that if I want to be loved, which is their sort of this praising thing feels pretty good, it's value invoking in their heart. So I just need to really try to get as much praise as I can and try to avoid the discipline. Well, you think, that's good. That's what we want them to hear. We want them to go down the track of doing the right thing. But the problem is that process does not establish unconditional love. It establishes conditional love. And they do need the praise for doing well, because that's an aspect of what develops motivation. And then they do need discipline, because that's an aspect of morality and understanding that you must do the right things and how do you function well in your world. But again, that's the only channel that's going on. There isn't actually an unconditional love message, even though there is unconditional love behind all of that activity, potentially, and maybe lots. But unless we carve out an unrelated to performance and unrelated to discipline channel, or a time, or an opportunity, or a conversation, they're going to think this whole relationship is based on performance. And conditional love does not establish worth. That's so critical to understand. It's only unconditional. It is that you can open yourself up to me, show me all of your scars, all your wounds, all of your failings, and I can value you and love you through all that. That's establishing unconditional love, because no matter what I see in you, I love you. That's what we need to have to fill that place. And we have to move off of the conditional love and the praise and discipline side and move into specific planned attack, planned focus, a strategy to make sure that message is being communicated, and understand that the assumption that it's coming through and all the positive side of praise and discipline, it's not.
One of the most gratifying things that we see in the context of the parenting program at Rock House Center is when the dynamics between parents and their child or children begin to shift, only because of the changes that are happening in the parent. Because that's what our parenting program is all about. It's all about working to help a child by Rock House working through the parent, And as they get this change, they start to move and shift in the way that they relate to the child, then their child begins to open up and start to flourish. And so an example, well, many examples come to mind, situations where there'll be a family with high standards, and they've communicated those high standards. The children all know it. The children may respond differently. You may have one that's rebelling, going a wrong direction, and another one that's totally towed the line as a high performer. But what parents come to realize is both those children have got some kind of message going on that is a performance-based love message. It's just that one has figured out how to make it work and get the parents' approval, and can be the one that has observed how it doesn't go well for their sibling when they rebel and they get in trouble. Things don't go well in the relationship with their parents, and they conclude, well, I want to do whatever it takes to not get that. I don't want that sense of rejection that my brother or sister is experiencing. So I'm going to follow the rules. I'm going to get the grades. I'm going to do everything they want me to do because I want, of course, to get their love, their acceptance, their approval. So even in that case, that child has got the same kind of conditional love message.
Right.
But what's beautiful is when that begins to shift. And parents have all kinds of different things that go on in their own lives and hearts depending on what their circumstance is. But foundationally, it always has to do with them developing a deeper understanding, the parents developing a deeper understanding of receiving God's unconditional love for them, trusting Him further, entrusting their child to God, and then being able to come off some of the control, rules, discipline, over focus, and be able to accept their child and express love to them even right in the midst of a big bad mistake the child's make. Not to condone the mistake or approve of it or indicate that their standards have changed, but to just love them in the middle of it. So I'm remembering one in particular where the parent told the story of they're actually leaving a parenting session to go deal with the text they'd gotten about their daughter having had a car accident, and thinking about on the way how angry they were about they'd told this child to be very careful with this car, only have liability insurance on it, really need you to make every effort to be a defensive driver and not let anything happen, and getting ready to arrive at the accident scene and unload. And just because of the way in which their hearts had changed, just being redirected by God to go, no, wait a minute, I don't need to do that. They know all that. I've told them all that. They know I'm not going to be happy with this. And just feeling very specifically led that the only thing they want to do is go see them, make sure they're okay, and the consequences of the accident, express love for them, and zero scolding, consequences. There are plenty of consequences that from the circumstance itself that would teach in that situation, and they don't need punishment or disapproval or withdrawal of affection added to it. And it was a turning point in their relationship with that child, because it becomes, those situations actually become an opportunity now to express the fact that you love them despite their mess up, which is, that's what we're all yearning for. We want to be fully known and fully loved. And the thought that, yeah, they can know that I did make a bad decision. I made a bad choice. I have a big consequence here, but I'm loved anyway.
There's another fascinating aspect of this is how God has made us, is that the motivations of the things that we actually do, for the things we actually do, come from the heart, not the head. So like you're saying, if she just goes through, the child already knows what it is that's wrong here, and they already know that it would be best if this wreck had not occurred. That's really clear. It's not going to be in any way helpful to go back and run them back through that and scold them or bring that back up again. It's in their head. So what we want to understand is that motivation comes from the heart. So as you're speaking into the child's heart, then their motivations begin to shift. And it's a fascinating thing how I think there were some examples you talked about earlier where children who were completely disinterested in the household, and maybe you could tell that one, and I'll come back around to that point.
There's a long list of those, but so I'll give you a few that characterize those kinds of shifts. So parents shifting off of criticism and hovering and expressing disappointment because the son just would not do basic things like unload the dishwasher. Promise to do it, get absorbed in phone and texting and not, and day in and day out of not coming through on the things that were the basic requirements in the household.
And punishments probably.
Yeah,
for not
consequences
delivering on
as a
that.
result. And just a lot of negative interaction and expressions of disappointment and what's wrong with you, why can't you do the basics? They decided really get a focus on their own hearts, part of it being just to look at why is this that upsetting to me? Why am I getting as distraught and as angry over this as I am? And they started looking at their own heart circumstances, their own contribution to the relationship, and started changing. The changes basically took the shape of just not worrying so much about those details and thinking more about what's going on with my son. Why is he behaving the way he's doing? Why is he doing what he's doing? And just more and more expressing a desire to be with him, love him, not contingent on whether he was pleasing them. Not too far into that shift happening, really just a few weeks. They had a Saturday. The parents were doing an all-out project day that was some pretty heavy house renovation-oriented stuff where they were doing the actual work themselves, and had made no mention to the son, no thought that the son was going to participate in that. He showed up and worked all day, shoulder to shoulder, had a great time with them. Mm-hmm. When the family dynamic begins to work for a child, they're motivated to support that family dynamic because it feels good and it's working for them. And again, that's the kind of thing that we just have an endless list of examples about. And the way it starts taking shape is the child who has lived in their bedroom, really kind of having this life detached from their parents, won't communicate, won't answer questions, just begins to show up, just starts showing up in the den, wants to sit in the den and just maybe sit there and talk to them. Then it turns into wanting to communicate. Then it turns into sitting next to them on the sofa and really engaging. The whole dynamic changing simply because the parents have started getting a refocus onto their own hearts. They're trusting God, they're receiving peace from God, and get the focus off the child's behavior or emotions that have been so distressing to them.
That's an example of the fact that when we get the heart changed, then the ultimate behavior or the interaction changes, and that's because motivation, the thing that drives behavior, and also the source of a sense of well-being are all going to come out of the heart. So as we're feeding the heart with the unconditional love that the heart needs, then things change significantly. And one of the interesting aspects, as you were talking about, one of supporting the system that's working for them, basically the way God has built us is that we are made to where we have gratitude and desire to please people who love us just out of gratitude for their love for us. There's a tendency to want to please them. And if you can see, the more and more a child accepts and understands how much they're loved, there's going to be a gratitude, a motivation from gratitude to tuck in and do those things that support and respect the family and the parent. And the reason that's the case is because there's the head-heart issue. There is the child knows going in and repeating the things that you've told the child 1,000 times to do them again. We've seen that 1,001 doesn't make any difference. So what's going on? How could that possibly be? Because what they actually do comes from their heart. That's where the actual movement comes from. So that's why more information doesn't actually change behavior, is you have to address whatever's going on in the heart, and then things begin to change, very significant ones. And in a surprising way, one of the examples that I love is sort of an illustration, is the old-time scene where a child is there with the dad, and the dad is going to have to spank the child for whatever reason. The father says, "This is going to hurt me more, it's going to hurt you." If we haven't spoken love into that child's heart and they know how much you care and love them, they're going to question if that's really true. How would they know it's going to hurt you more than it's going to hurt them? If they could know it was going to hurt you more than it was going to hurt them, and they cared about that because they see the love you have for them, and the child doesn't want to hurt the parent, then the child is going to avoid the things which cause the parents hurt. So they're going to be more inclined to try to avoid situations which cause someone who they love to suffer emotionally. So you can see it completely changes the mentality around the whole idea if we are loving people and expressing how much we care for them and value them, then they're going to care. If we say that there's something that we really want to avoid and we don't like to have to do in life, you'll find the child trying to contribute in whatever way they can to make it so that someone they love doesn't have to do something they don't want to do. And if that includes discipline, then you're going to find them tucking into the program. You're going to find them complying more because they really believe this hurts Daddy when he has to discipline me. And so that's a really interesting example of how the shift can change the dynamic in parenting and in discipline as well.
Another of my favorite examples of testimonies of parents seeing how much the dynamic changes between them and their child is one where a mom felt clearly convicted she needed to stop sending a daily text to her son that contained a scripture designed to convict him of a sin pattern he was in. That was a life-changing realization for the son and for their relationship. She just immediately changed and did what she felt like God prompted her to do, which was to communicate his love for her son and her own love for her son. Because again, a child stuck in a sin pattern knows they're stuck in a sin pattern, and just what you said a minute ago, more information about that isn't going to change the sin pattern. And in fact, if we just have added information about how this is outside of God's will, then it just really just adds to the shame about the sin, which adds to the sin and the proclivity to go there.
Yep.
And so the healing thing here is expressing the love of God and our best version of love without condition to our child in a way that they can accept and receive. And simple things like changing the content of a text from a condemnation to one of acceptance and love no matter what. Getting together with a child just for the purpose of communicating with them, relating to them, because you care about their world. So we've had a number of examples where a parent decides that rather than express their dismay or anger about the child's time spent with things like video games, they just decide that despite the fact they don't like video games, in fact, maybe even detest them, they just sit down and find out what's on the video games, talk to the child about it, engage in a video game, have a little bit of a dialogue back and forth, solely for the purpose of just expressing that I want to know what you're into, what's interesting to you about this, and let them talk about it. Or the parent who felt led to visit their grown daughter at her job, young grown daughter, early 20s, just visit at her job, let her talk for 30 minutes about what she does in her job. Happened that nobody else was there at that time, and they just got to hear all this information about a topic again that the parents weren't especially interested in the topic itself, just interested in it because their daughter cared about it. That is such a meaningful expression of basically, if you care about it, then it matters to me. Mm-hmm. Well, that, of course, is how God views us. I mean, he wants us bringing all our cares and concerns and petitions to him, even if we think they're silly or petty. If it's upsetting to us, God wants to hear about it, and he wants us to talk to him about it, and he wants us to put our burdens on him. So it's that same kind of reflecting of God's love to our child that helps them interpret. It helps them break the code of our love because we're expressing it to them differently.
Mm-hmm. Another really important dynamic of this is in terms of looking at the way in which God loves. And we've all heard the scripture that God loved us first. And it's because God loved us that we can love him back. That's where love comes from. That's the seed of love in our lives. As it applies to parenting, the parents are the first ones from which the child can experience love. And so it is this, when we are feeding this love to the child, the unconditional, as close as we can as humans, unconditional love to our child, then that basically begins to build that love and build that value and allows them to love back. So it is fascinating to look at how closely the design of parenting, as God has parented us, fits into our parenting of our children. And that is another really important part of it, is that the source of the love that they have to give us comes first from our love to them. And it has to come through as love. It can't come through as praise in the discipline cycle. It has to actually come through from those set apart moments in time where we express that love totally unrelated to any event. And then there are those times when we express that love in the middle of an event too, as you're referring to in those kind of cases, where we express that love as the primary thing between between the parent and the child in the middle of that experience, whether that be a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah, what a great, just imagine it for yourself. What a great thing to know that you just did a big, awful mess up. And your parents love you no matter what. They're making it clear. I mean, you can think back in your own life, whatever age you are, just imagine how great that did feel if it ever happened to you or would have felt to know that despite this giant transgression that just goes totally against their values and everything that they've taught you, everything they've done, you did something that was totally in contradiction to that. What you got back was their expression that they're not disappointed in you, they're not withholding their love from you, they're concerned, as to why you would do that, want to help you with what would have made you make that choice, but has no impact on whether I love you or accept you. Well, that child is going to be at peace. They're going to be resilient. That's where worth, a sense of worth, comes from. Mm-hmm. And the mystery of why does my child have low self-worth? Well, this is how we help them build their sense of worth, is that they receive from us as parents that we value them no matter what.
Also understand that we are not saying that consequences go away in love. Discipline doesn't go away in love. Praise doesn't go away in love. We're just saying it has to be a separate and complete channel of communication and messaging and demonstration between you and your child. It actually doesn't help to go in and remove natural consequences. That's actually part of the learning process. It's loving them through the consequences, which establishes or strengthens the love that is there. It's not about you rescuing them and making sure they don't suffer. It is, and obviously if it's a catastrophic consequence, we do want to rescue them. It's something, if it's something really huge that be hard for them to recover from and so forth. But the sort of run-of-the-mill day-to-day consequences of things that they do that you love them through, it doesn't help to remove those consequences. And we're not, just make sure you understand, this unconditional love does not remove consequences. God does not remove the consequences of our bad decisions. He loves us through them. That's a really important, there's the corollary between the two, is that no matter what it is, God absolutely loves us. And that is a foundational aspect of our relationship with God. But he also does not remove the consequences if we make a bad decision. But he can hold us at a place of peace, and he can hold us and help us be resilient in that through his unconditional acceptance and love. And that's the role, that's the model that we were trying to help parents emulate in the relationship with their children.
One of the great things that parents begin to experience as they go through this process at Rock House and they get this deepened track in their lives of being able to represent that kind of love to their child is they start realizing it's actually easier. It's less burdensome because so many parents have just exhausted themselves with all kinds of activities and doing things and supporting their child and truly, literally exhausting themselves trying to do the things that are traditionally in our culture thought of the ways that you communicate unconditional love to your child. And much of that could be diminished or even removed if what they're receiving is this channel of communication that we're talking about that's in addition to separate from praise and correction, but it's over on the I just want to hear what you have to say because I want to know what's going on in your mind and your heart, and I'm not going to try to correct you or fix you or tell you that you're wrong to feel that way. I just want to hear what matters to you. I care about you. I love you. You can trust me. Those kinds of ways of beginning to relate without criticism, condemnation, and rejection begins to build a whole different track in our child's life and heart where we begin to realize that all these other things that we've done and expended a tremendous amount of energy may or may not even be necessary.
It's also just important to interject here that it doesn't matter how old your child is or when you shift in how you relate to them and when you open up this channel with them. You can be 75 years old and your child could be 50 or add 20 more years to both of those. It makes no difference because we have, as parents, this divine authority, this place of credibility, this important spot that we never lose. There's always the opportunity to fix and go back.
We want to encourage you that it is more than worth the time to invest in opening up this new channel of communicating and messaging as a parent, and it actually makes parenting easier as the more we kind of get going on this stride. It just takes some sort of rewiring of how we connect to our children, which comes as a result of, first of all, rejecting some false beliefs that we're laboring under because of how we were parented. I was parented by humans who were not God, so all of us as parents have that in common, that none of us are perfect parents. And so whatever false beliefs about ourselves as parents or as people or our connection to God, we just want to begin to come out from under those things so that we can more easily and more naturally transmit the love to our children in a way that they can decode and translate and receive as we hope they can.
So to make that change, and that's a pretty deep change, it's one that we really would recommend calling on God to get some help, because we're looking for some movement in our own hearts to move us into this place so that this kind of relating to our children is a natural, something that comes out of our heart. It's not because we have the head knowledge we're supposed to be different, but our heart actually desires to relate to this way. And then we're pulled by desire and not by our own wrestling and trying to be disciplined parents. We want to have the kind of heart that naturally parents this way. So we're looking for heart transformation, and that's always a time to bring God into the conversation to get that done. So if you're someone out there that would like some help from the Lord to shift into this other way of parenting with all the rewards we think are associated, and we've seen that are associated with it, then just follow me in this prayer. So here we go. Heavenly Father, thank you for loving me unconditionally. I reject any lie I may have within me that I can earn your love. I accept that your love is perfect and unconditional and eternal. Father, help me to do my imperfect best to express unconditional love to my children. Also, I forgive my child for any offense I have taken from their words or their behavior. Please give me the empathy to see the condition of their heart in every situation and how to speak the love they need to hear into it. Father, please create the opportunities and give me the words from the heart to clearly communicate love that has no conditions attached. Father, please prepare the heart of my children to receive this truth and to be blessed by it. I pray all these things in the precious name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for listening today. And if you think that this would bless someone that you know, please feel free to pass it on. And of course, to contact us at Rock House Center if you want to know more about our services, whether it's parenting or anything else. We thank you for listening, and God bless you.
God bless you. Goodbye.